As we know at this point, the Switch does not have any internal or system level voice chat, whether it's in games or just at the dashboard creating a room and just talking to people. And of course, we have seen the phone app, we've used the phone app at this point, and a lot of us are trying to figure out, why do we need the phone app? Why can't the Switch do voice chat? Why isn't it designed to do voice chat? And this has left people pretty much trying to just figure out, speculating as to why this is the case, because Nintendo has been very tight-lipped on this, right? Nothing about why we need to use a separate device rather than just plug our headset into the Switch itself. So I figured we could go through some of the reasons people are coming up with and kind of talk about them, and maybe at this point try to figure out what Nintendo's thinking or what they're forced to do even. Now, I do want to say we really don't know at this point why this is the case. We can only speculate, so anything really brought up in the video is just that, speculation. We don't know what could be causing this. So the biggest one I see brought up a lot actually is that the Switch does not have enough RAM to support voice chat, which really they could be right, because the OS could be designed in a way that it just doesn't have it allotted for it right now. But I do look at different examples, and it kind of dissuades me from believing that. If we take, for example, the original DS, or even the DS Lite, it has 4 megabytes. Yes, that's right, guys. 4 megabytes of RAM, and it did have voice chat in games. It did not have a system-level voice chat, much like, say, the 360 did, where you could do cross-game chat. It was pretty much limited to certain games, specifically something like Metroid Hunters, for example, had it. And at that point, you could jump into the game, and then you could do voice chat natively on the system. Nothing outside of it, but in the game, sure, worked great. The Vita has cross-game. You actually will put Skype in the background and talk to people even, and that had 512 megs of system memory, and then it had 128 megabytes left over for VRAM separate from that. So really, the only system I remember hearing about issues with was the PS3, and they actually went on record talking about the PS3 to Eurogamer. Back in 2011, Shuhei Yoshida had an interview talking to Eurogamer about this interesting issue back then, where everyone was trying to figure out why the PS3 could not do cross-game chat. Of course, if you're in a game, you could do chat with those people. Something like Destiny worked fine in-game, but nothing on the dashboard that would let you talk to people who were playing different games. And he had an interesting quote to tell Eurogamer explaining why. He said this: "Once a game gets RAM, we never get it back. It's not possible to retrofit something like that after the fact. The game has to use its own memory to do in-game voice chat. There's always voice chat in the game, but it's a part of a game feature. It's not a part of an OS feature. That's the reason in terms of the ability to have voice chat across different games." Yoshida even went on to say that the Vita will have better voice chat than the PS3. That's right, the handheld system will have better voice chat than the console. And that's, again, because of the way the PS3 memory is laid out. See, a lot of people don't realize this. The PS3 has 2 pools of memory, not a unified pool much like the 360 did. There are 2 different pools, both 256 megabytes of RAM, one set aside for the GPU, one set aside for the CPU to access for OS-level things. For example, you turn it on and you're scrolling through the dashboard and maybe you pick an application. It is at that time using mostly system RAM and then maybe some of the VRAM for graphical interfaces on screen, but not a lot of it. And the reasoning here for them was to allot a certain amount for the GPU that they included, and then of course they wanted to keep a certain amount for the very interestingly laid out cell processor. And it was because of this that they opted to give that much RAM to the game no matter what, that they just could not allot more over here if they didn't need that much for the game. They were able to program it directly into the game and tap into that pool. However, they could not switch between games because it was not an OS level feature that they included. The 360, on the other hand, did, because they had a pool, a unified pool of 512 megabytes of RAM, same amount if you add them together, but it was an entire pool that you could take as much as you needed depending on the game, and the OS itself was able to use more if it needed it for something like voice chat. We can even go back to the PSP, that also had voice chat, worked fine. The PS2 had voice chat. The original Xbox had voice chat. These are all systems with significantly less video RAM, or just RAM in general, than the Switch. The Switch has 4 gigabytes of RAM. According to developers, generally about 1 gigabyte of that or so is allotted to the operating system, with the rest allotted to games. And that's just kind of something we've heard. We can't confirm it from Nintendo themselves. And this is really the reason I look at the RAM figures, and with systems that have had voice chat in the past, it's hard for me to believe that the Switch cannot incorporate even in-game chat, even if it's not system level, because maybe they just didn't design the OS to do that. you could still have in-game chat. The fact that they're able to do it on DS with significantly less RAM tells me that if they wanted Splatoon 2, for example, to have in-game chat, they could have. But we don't know 100% for sure because we don't know a lot about the Switch. It's still very early. We don't know a lot about the OS. Maybe eventually we get some kind of update that allows optional voice chat in-game, because right now the outcry is pretty loud, so if it's possible, I have a feeling Nintendo may be looking into this. Now, the next thing a lot of people were talking about was the possibility of battery life being affected, and yes, that's possible, but again, we can look back on other mobile devices. We have, again, the Vita, which was not the best when it came to battery. We've seen it, right? The Vita would get like 2.5, 3 hours if you're playing a game, kind of similar to the Switch, actually. But with voice chat, it still had similar battery life. Voice chat really does not take up the resources I think a lot of people believe that it does. And really, again, battery life we would figure out on our own. Nintendo doesn't have to cater to us about that because we have portable battery banks. We now have battery cases that are being manufactured. We can stay at home and leave it on the dock. A lot of people don't even take their Switch with them half the time. They just leave it at home and play on the dock. I've talked to 2 or 3 people now that have never played the system in handheld mode. So battery life would affect some, but not all. And those it does affect are probably already looking into ways to make their battery last longer or to refill it if they run out. Now, the next one that I keep hearing about is maybe the Switch is just pushed too hard in these games and it just can't process voice chat while this is all going on. And again, it's possible because we just don't know much about the Switch now. We don't know how much it's actually really straining to run some of these games, right? We see dynamic resolution for certain frame rates, so it is probably being pushed. However, again, resources with voice chat they're not insane when it comes to these kind of systems. Voice chat can be integrated pretty well usually. We can even look back on the original Xbox. That's a great example because a game like Halo 2 came out, and Halo 2 stressed the Xbox like crazy. That was a game that pushed that system to its absolute limits. I mean, that was it, but voice chat worked great. Up to 16 people could be in a room chatting if you do a big team battle of 8 on 8. You get to the end and everyone's kind of just talking, or even during the match, 8 people are talking. I mean, that's a great example there for a system being pushed as hard as possible, but the voice chat was great. I never had any issues with voice chat, despite that game having some frame rate issues and, of course, pop in on textures while they waited for them to load. There was a lot of stuff happening there, but the voice chat never seemed to skip a beat. Now, let me talk to you guys about why I think there is a phone app involved here. We've seen Nintendo really look at the mobile scene now, right? We've seen them kind of dip their toe in the water a little bit with things like Mario Run and Fire Emblem Heroes. And I feel like Nintendo likes being on people's cell phones because the market is there. It's a handheld market that most video game publishers have not been able to tap into successfully, right? Companion apps are companion apps. They don't really become important or mandatory to a lot of people. The Sony one, the Microsoft one, any of those, while they're great, a lot of people don't even download them because, well, you don't need them. They're just there for just extra features. But in this case, Nintendo realizes that they can make you download it by making it mandatory for voice chat. That is my assumption here, is that they want to get on people's cell phones for a bunch of reasons. I mean, think about the implications of starting now when the Switch market is smaller and if maybe eventually gets larger. Not only are they controlling you with the Switch, obviously, because they can push advertisements when you turn your Switch on. If you look on the left, you see all kinds of different things about the new games coming out, new game sales. Now, all of a sudden, you have a phone that can do the same thing if you're away from your Switch, right? Who knows when we get to a point where we start seeing push notifications show up, because there is an option for it to exist, and they can track any data that's going through that app, so they can see the games you like, the games you are checking most often. There's a lot of stuff to go into having their stuff on your phone, and I have a good feeling that their marketing team is very excited to be able to show you stuff on your phone. Even if you don't own a Nintendo console, people could technically download the Nintendo app just to have it if they want. Although I don't really know why you would do that if you don't have any Switch-related stuff or even the games, but you could, I guess. Either way, there's a lot of stuff I think that this app could turn into, and to get people owning it now before maybe voice chat becomes optional, but you still have it, there are some implications there with advertising, like I said. Who knows? Maybe they eventually get to the point where they're selling you stuff through that app. Maybe you can buy games through it for your Switch, even if you're not near your Switch. But those are my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments, because at this point, it's all speculation. It could be that the system isn't strong enough right now. It could be that the operating system isn't ready for it. It could also be that, yeah, maybe there's a RAM bottleneck somewhere. Who knows? But I'm curious what you guys think on why there's no voice chat internal to the system, even built into games, because even the Wii U, which had half the RAM, had voice chat in games. It's very odd, but I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good Saturday today, guys.